Hello and welcome to French Philosophers React, a philosophical take on the news headlines for today, September 15th, 2024. This is an AI-generated podcast intended as an engaging, relevant, and informative way to explore what French philosophers might think about the day's news. But like all AI, it can make mistakes. Use it for generating possible ideas, but don't rely on it as an authoritative guide to the news or to the details of French philosophy. In the news today, hundreds of protesters gathered in 30 French cities and Brussels to support Gisèle Pélicot, a woman repeatedly raped by her husband and dozens of men over 10 years. Demonstrators held placards with messages of support for victims of sexual violence and called for an end to rape culture. The case has shocked the world and led to widespread condemnation of the perpetrators, including several who claimed they did not know Pélicot had been drugged and thought their sex was consensual. Gisèle Pélicot has praised police for saving her life and described the rapes as torture. The trial is ongoing, with many of the accused men facing prison sentences. Commentary: the stage of human cruelty, where we project our darkest desires and most heinous fears onto others, and yet remain willfully blind to the harm we cause. As Michel Serres so astutely observed in The Five Senses, the world is a stage on which we project our own desires and fears. And what's more, it's also a screen that distorts our perceptions, making us complicit in systemic violence against women like Gisèle Pélicot. The hundreds of protesters who gathered in 30 French cities and Brussels to support her are a testament to the collective outrage that can arise when we're forced to confront the harm inflicted upon others. But what's striking about this story is how often perpetrators and bystanders alike refuse to acknowledge their complicity in this systemic violence. As Serres wrote in Biogia, humans have a tendency to deny or downplay the consequences of our actions, especially when they involve harming others or the environment. In the case of Gisèle Pélicot's rapists, several of whom claimed they didn't know she'd been drugged and thought their sex was consensual, this denial takes on a particularly pernicious form. It's as if these men are afraid to confront the truth about themselves, so they project their own desires onto others, in this case, Gisèle Pélicot. They see her not as a person with agency and dignity, but as a mere object for their gratification. And by doing so, they reveal a fundamental ignorance that goes beyond mere moral blindness. It's an ignorance of the very human condition itself. As Serres noted in The Natural Contract, denial is a fundamental form of ignorance, one that prevents us from confronting the harm we've caused and learning from our mistakes. In this case, the perpetrator's refusal to acknowledge their complicity has led to widespread condemnation but it's also a stark reminder of how far we still have to go in recognizing the inherent value and dignity of every human being. The trial of Gisèle Pélicot's rapists is ongoing, with many facing prison sentences. But what's more important than the verdict itself is the fact that this case has sparked a national conversation about rape culture and the systemic violence that perpetuates it. It's a conversation that requires us to confront our own complicity in this harm, to look at ourselves, not just at others, and ask, what am I projecting onto the world? What fears and desires am I hiding from myself? In doing so, we may finally begin to see the world for what it truly is, a stage on which we project our darkest desires and most heinous fears, but also a screen that distorts our perceptions, and a screen that can be shattered by our collective refusal to remain willfully blind. Thank you for listening to today's episode of French Philosophers React. Be sure to come back tomorrow for more reflective takes on the day's news.